This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki broke his silence about the separation wall that is being built around Al-Adhamiyya district. Al-Maliki announced from Cairo his rejection to the construction of this wall and demanded that the construction be stopped. Iraqis welcomed Maliki's position, but American officials said that the decision to stop building the wall is not final and that they are discussing the issue with the Iraqi government. We leave you with Katia Jameen.
This cement wall is indicative of the deteriorating political and security crisis in Iraq. Unpainted cement blocks similar to these will block the windows of Iraqis. Despite Iraqi government objections, these cement blocks are used to build a new wall. American officials said that the objective of the wall is not to isolate Al-Adhamiyya, but rather to protect it.
I said that I fear that this wall will have a negative impact, which reminds us of other walls, meaning Palestine and Germany. Therefore, we reject this wall. We must find other alternatives to protect the area, especially since Al-Adhamiyya is an important area and needs more protection.
The Prime Minister's decision to stop building the wall is a positive move.
The decision made by Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is right. Frankly, the wall may divide the people and isolate them from each other.
American officials did not share the Iraqis' view. They rushed to justify the building of the wall by saying that the objective is to protect the people and that they are discussing the issue with the Iraqi government.
The objective of building a wall in Al-Adhamiyya is not to separate people and create social or political change. It is an attempt to detect and deal with points of weakness.
So the points of weakness will be detected by building a 5-kilometer-long separation wall. Most likely, this wall will not change much. The Iraqi crisis has not changed for years. If the solution is going to be reached by building cement walls, then it will definitely not be an easy one.
It seems that the situation in Iraq will not change much with or without a separation wall. Death and destruction continues every day. A booby-trapped car exploded, killing at least one person. Another person was killed outside the Iranian embassy in Baghdad. A series of explosions killed more than 23 people. One explosion took place outside a restaurant outside the Green Zone, and another one took place in Al-Mosul, outside the headquarters of a Kurdish party.
لأحد الأحزاب الكردية.
أهلا بكم مجددا. اشتدت حدة المعارك في العاصمة الصومالية مقديشو مع الحملة التي تشنها الحكومة الصومالية.
The battles in the Somali capital of Mogadishu intensified as the Somali government, backed by Ethiopian forces, carried out a campaign to wipe out the Islamic Court's fighters. A local human rights activist said that at least 230 people have been killed and thousands of residents in the capital have been forced to flee their homes in the past 6 days of fighting.
هز قصف عنيف مجددا أحياء العاصمة الصومالية مقديشو مع اشتداد حدة الاشتباكات بين القوات الحكومية والأثيوبية من جهة ومسلحين تابعين لميليشيات المحاكم من جهة أخرى.
A fierce shelling once again shook the neighborhoods of the Somali capital of Mogadishu, with the escalation in clashes between the government and Ethiopian forces on one side and the armed fighters affiliated with the Islamic Court's militias on the other. The residents of Mogadishu described these as the most violent clashes in recent days. The confrontations were centered in the northern neighborhoods of the capital, where the government and the Ethiopian forces are attempting to eliminate the Islamic Court's holdouts and pockets. Eyewitnesses witnesses confirmed that Ethiopian tanks took up new positions in the northern part of the capital, focusing its continued shelling on Islamic Court's fighters' positions. In these clashes, both sides are using mortar shells, anti-aircraft missiles, and automatic weapons. As a result of the ferocity of these battles, hospitals have been flooded with wounded people. Meanwhile, many decomposing corpses have been left scattered throughout the streets in areas where it is too dangerous to retrieve them. According to a Somali non-governmental organization, more than 230 people have died in the battles of the past 6 days. Local human rights activists said that the fighting, which erupted last Wednesday, has forced more than 500,000 people to flee the city in a mass exodus, which is the largest since the overthrow of President Mohammed Siad Barre in 1991. In a short war at the beginning of this year, the transitional Somali government, with the support of the Ethiopian soldiers, tanks and fighters, had prevailed against the Islamic courts. However, the government continues to struggle to take complete control of the Somali capital, where the Islamic courts fighters have reorganized their ranks with the support of some tribal members and war and traditional leaders who seek to confront the Somali President Abdullah Yusuf for a second time.
في وجه حكومة الرئيس الصومالي عبد الله يوسف.
This evening, Israel will begin celebrating Independence Day, marking the 59th anniversary of the creation of the state. Celebrations will begin after an abrupt and painful transition from Remembrance Day, honoring the memory of the IDF soldiers who have fallen in the defense of the country and the victims of terror. IBA's Leah Zinder reports.
At 11 o'clock this morning, the sirens blared across the country. Traffic came to a standstill, stood in silent tribute in the streets and at 43 military cemeteries across the land. Cities of marble, acting President Dalia Itzik called them. There, families and comrades at arms gathered to remember the 22,305 men and women who have fallen since 1860. At the state memorial ceremony on Mount Herzl in the capital this morning, grieving families came together with their leaders for a moment of prayer, shared pain, and words that tried to bridge the abyss of loss. Prime Minister Ehud Olmert made no reference to last summer's Lebanon war, which has added 119 names to the list of the fallen. But he told the families, on this day we are all one bereaved family. The price for defending Israel is great and terrible, he said, but without it, we would not exist. He added this country is ready to make extreme, painful compromises for the sake of peace.
The Palestinian Interior Minister has submitted his resignation to Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh, apparently over the lack of cooperation between Palestinian security chiefs. Sources claim Haniyeh is trying to convince Hani Kouasmeh to withdraw his resignation. The move is seen as the first crack in the month-old unity government and follows the extensive wrangling that went on between Hamas and Fatah over the appointment of an interior minister who controls security forces. And Hezbollah's deputy chief claims the terror group is negotiating a prisoner swap with Israel in good faith through UN mediators. Sheikh Naim Qassem stressed, however, that no progress had been made, and he insisted that IDF soldiers Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev would only be freed in exchange for the release of all Lebanese prisoners detained by Israel. In regional news, a farce. That's how opposition groups are describing parliamentary elections currently underway in Syria. Low voter turnout was reported on this second and final day of balloting. Critics argue there is no democracy in Syria because the government of President Bashar al-Assad automatically keeps the majority of seats in the 250-seat legislature for the ruling Ba'ath Party. The United States described the elections as meaningless, and the opposition called for a boycott, claiming the results are already known in advance. European Union foreign ministers today approved a measure implementing United Nations sanctions against Iran after the hardline Islamic country refused to halt uranium enrichment. The sanctions are targeted against individuals and organizations involved in Tehran's disputed nuclear and missile programs. And in a related development, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmedinejad said today his country would prefer to remain within the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and resist UN sanctions peacefully. Back here at home, on the eve of Israel's 59th Independence Day, the nation's population has grown to 7,150,000. That's an increase of 120,000, or 1.8%, since last year's Independence Day. According to the Central Bureau of Statistics, the population growth was due mainly to the high birth rate rather than immigration, with some 148,000 new babies. There were only some 18,000 new immigrants arriving, but that figure was more than offset by the number of people who chose to leave the country. The Jewish population now stands at over 5.4 million. The Arab and Druze population numbers about 1.4 million, or 29% of the population.
يكون الإحساس بالمسؤولية بحد ذاته.
To have a sense of responsibility, one expresses his willingness to accept responsibility. After receiving your duties, this responsibility falls on you, and it is an honor entrusted in you by those who elected you to represent them.
Syrians voted today to elect a new parliament. Mohammed Said Bighitan, the regional secretary for the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, and several of the party leaders have participated in today's elections. This is what it looked like in and around the Abed Rahman Kawakibi Secondary School. Mohammed Said Bighitan, the regional secretary for the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, and several party leaders participated in today's legislative elections. Bighitan said that these elections are an important milestone in the history of democracy in Syria. He urged Syrians to exercise their right and vote for those candidates who serve their people well and look out for the best interests of the country under the leadership of President Bashar al-Assad.
الأجواء الانتخابية جيدة وهذا في الحقيقة عرس حقيقي للديمقراطية.
The voting process went very well. It is an occasion to celebrate democracy. The citizens exercise their constitutional duties and voting rights in all Syrian governorates. They voted today to elect their representatives for the Legislative Council. Every country reserves the right to promote democracy in a way that best serves its interests and promotes the culture and history of its people. Therefore, we do not accept any imported democracy. Our democracy comes from within our country, traditions, and serves the interests of our nation and people.
لذلك نحن نرفض أي ديمقراطية مستوردة. الديمقراطية هي نابعة من عاداتنا وتقاليدنا ومصالح شعبنا وأمتنا.
Moreover, several regional Ba'ath leaders, including Dr. Mohammed Hussein, Hisham Kitiar, Dr. Haitham Satahi, Saeed Iliya, and Khalil Mishihadia, the head of the Damascus Ba'ath branch, participated in the elections.
أكدت دمشق أنها ستلجأ إلى المقاومة من أجل استعادة الجولان المحتل إذا ما
Syrian officials said that they are ready to use the option of resistance to free the occupied Golan if Israel continues to refuse withdrawing to the 1967 borders. They have also denied any secret peace negotiations with the Zionist entity, stressing that the Syrian-American national Ibrahim Suleiman's visit to Israel and his statements at the Knesset do not reflect the official Syrian position.
لا تعكس وجهة النظر السورية.
Damascus stressed that the Syrian-American national Ibrahim Suleiman's visit to Israel and his statements at the Knesset do not reflect the official Syrian position. Suleiman had said that Israel and Syria should launch secret peace negotiations. Meanwhile, Damascus completely rejects such negotiations with the Zionist entity.
مع الكيان الصهيوني. المدعو سليمان لم يكلفه أحد
The so-called Suleiman was not sent by any Syrian official, and he did not represent any official Syrian entity. His visit is not recognized as an official Syrian negotiation channel.
Syria has repeatedly expressed its desire to achieve a just and a comprehensive peace based on international resolutions which call on Israel to withdraw from the occupied Arab lands. As long as the Zionist government refuses to withdraw from the occupied Golan Heights, the only option will be resistance.
إذا استمر العدو بالتمرد على الشرعية الدولية.
If the enemy continues to reject international resolutions pertaining to the Golan Heights, then Syria will consider resistance as an option for regaining its rights.
Syria's objective is to liberate the Golan Heights and to establish its sovereignty on all of it. This is the foundation of Syria's political position.
There is the question of whether the Golan Heights should be liberated through negotiations or through resistance. No one wants empty negotiations or aimless resistance. There are several ways in which the Golan Heights can be liberated. What matters is that the Golan Heights is liberated. We in Syria hope that all the Golan Heights get liberated through peaceful negotiations.
The Syrian public opinion is similar to the Syrian official position on the issue of the Golan Heights. The Syrian people believe that if they cannot liberate the Golan Heights through negotiations, then they are left with the option of resistance.
We are committed to the liberation of the Golan Heights. We must use all means to liberate our occupied Arab lands.
We must first use negotiations. Of course, Israel will refuse. So far, it has refused all peace initiatives. If Israel refuses, then we are only left with the option of resistance.
In principle, land should be exchanged for peace. But if Israel refuses, then the only other option is resistance.
We, the Syrian people, prefer to go with the peace process, but if Israel continues to be stubborn, then we are only left with the option of resistance.
Damascus has always expressed its desire for a just and a comprehensive peace, and it refuses to conduct secret negotiations with the Zionist occupation. Damascus confirms that the option of resistance is still on the table if Israel continues to refuse the peace process based on land for peace.
العالم دمشق خاص لبرنامج هذا الأسبوع.
Ghazi Hamad, the spokesman for the Palestinian Foreign Ministry, confirmed that the Palestinian Interior Minister, Hani Kawasmi, has submitted his resignation to Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh. Haniyeh refused to accept Kawasmi's resignation, which was announced during a Palestinian cabinet session. Hamad said that Kawasmi's resignation had something to do with his job at the Interior Ministry.
أستطيع أن أؤكد بأن وزير الداخلية الأستاذ هاني القواسمي بالفعل قدم استقالته السيد رئيس الوزراء إسماعيل هنية.
Yes, the Palestinian Interior Minister, Hani Kawasmi, has indeed submitted his resignation to the Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh. However, Haniyeh did not accept the resignation and asked Kawasmi to remain in his post. Kawasmi's resignation has something to do with his job at the Interior Ministry, where he's faced with numerous problems and obstacles. The resignation will be a subject of discussion between the Prime Minister and the Palestinian President Abu Mazen upon his return to the Palestinian territories.
الرئيس ولقائه مع رئيس الوزراء سيتم البت في موضوع الاستقالة.
We are joined now from Gaza by our correspondent Wael Dakdu. Wael, do you think that Kawasmi will reconsider his resignation decision after the Prime Minister refused to accept it?
وأنا أعتقد بأن عدم قبول رئيس الوزراء لاستقالة.
I believe that the decision by the Prime Minister not to accept Kawasmi's resignation was a tactical move. First, Haniyeh wants Kawasmi to reconsider the resignation and remain in his post. Second, Haniyeh wants to discuss with President Mahmoud Abbas and other concerned parties the reasons and objectives that prompted the Interior Minister to step down. Until the Palestinian President returned to the Palestinian territories from his international tour, the Interior Minister will continue to run his ministry's affairs. Meanwhile, Kawasmi's resignation and the reasons behind it will be dealt with upon the President's return.
More than 120,000 Palestinians are prohibited from entering Palestinian territories in the West Bank, and more than 500,000 Palestinians in the United States and Europe have had their Palestinian ID cards confiscated by Israel, rendering them foreigners in their own land. The implementation of this unwritten Israeli law started at the end of last year, and the Palestinians affected by it have started forming committees to address their problem.
The summer usually returns bringing with it loved ones from abroad, but this year the summer will return alone. This is because Israel will not allow tens of thousands of Palestinians carrying foreign citizenships from returning to their villages and towns. The decision is not written, but it has been implemented since the end of last year, when more than 120,000 Palestinians were prohibited from entering the West Bank through the Israeli-controlled border. They were refused entry allegedly for security reasons.
They have dispersed Palestinian families and couples, with some people living in the West Bank while their spouses are living outside. This procedure will push the people living in the West Bank to migrate outside to join their spouses.
More than 573,000 Palestinians living in the United States and Europe hold foreign passports. Based on Israeli policy, these people's Palestinian ID cards were confiscated, making them foreigners in their own land. Israel was not satisfied with this and denied them entry visas to visit their families or check on their possessions, particularly their land, which Israel threatens to confiscate as absentee property.
I used to renew my visa using my wife's card. She is Palestinian, and I have 2 children, but now I have a problem. I am afraid that if I leave to renew the visa, they will not let me back in.
This is my home. I've been married since 1963. I'm a Palestinian now.
The people who were able to go into the West Bank before the implementation of the procedure are afraid because their visas have expired and they cannot leave to renew them for fear that they will not be allowed back in.
It is clear that Israel is doing this intentionally and systematically, with the purpose of emptying the Palestinian lands from future potential skilled labor and support to the Palestinian community.
A complicated life for Palestinians in their homeland amidst dividing walls and military barriers and indefinite migrations. The Palestinians are imprisoned in an expansive jail through which Israel implements its policy of slow, forceful migration. Yet another attempt by Israel to fulfill its agenda of transferring the Palestinians outside of their land by prohibiting Palestinians carrying foreign passports from returning to their homes and villages in Palestine. Nasreen Silmi, Al Hayat, LBC, Ramallah.
While Lebanon awaits the results of the visit made by UN legal advisor Nicolas Michel to Beirut, the final decision on the International Tribunal will largely depend on the visit to be made by UN Chief Ban Ki-moon to Damascus this week. Meanwhile, the Parliament majority members prepare to hold another sit-in in Parliament tomorrow, and March 14 members have vowed that the court will be established.
As the majority MPs prepare to hold another sit-in in Parliament tomorrow, the head of the Democratic Gathering, MP Walid Jumblat, reiterated that the political struggle in Lebanon is over the Ta'if Accords and the arms. He asked that Hezbollah's resistance be for Lebanon and not a resistance for non-Lebanese interests. He said that Sanura's government is that of the Ta'if Accords, the Lebanese army, the internal security forces, parliament and constitutional institutions. Jumblat added that when Hezbollah decides to merge with the Lebanese state and become legitimate, it will be welcome, stressing that no solution will be possible outside the framework of dialogue and its 5 pillars: the government, the demarcation of the Shiba farms, diplomatic relations with Syria, Palestinian weapons and the International Court. For his part, Telecommunications Minister Marwan Ahmedi said the Lebanese are asking the March 14 forces to stand strong and preserve the democratic system in Lebanon and not give up their country to the state of the Faqih and to those who have 30,000 missiles. In an interview with the Liwa Daily today, Ahmedi said that the opposition does not have any remarks over the court except one: no to the International Court. to protect the criminals. Hamedi said House Speaker Nabih Berri and the opposition are to be held responsible for referring the International Court to Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, expressing hope that Berri would change his mind. Hamedi added, however, that the majority will not wait long because the plan to paralyze the parliament until the 30th of May has been revealed. Meanwhile, Hezbollah Deputy Chief Sheikh Naim Qasim said the majority are before two choices only: either agree to participate according to constitutional means or reproduce the government through parliamentary elections. Qasim stressed that the resistance weapons will stay until Lebanon moves to what he called the defensive strategy.
President Mahmoud Ahmedinejad says what is shouted on Iran's peaceful nuclear work over loudspeakers around the world has political motives and lacks any legal substance. The president said in a joint interview with Reuters news agency and Al Alam news network on Monday, Tehran's nuclear activities have not violated laws, adding Iran sees no reason to return from the already trodden path. Ahmedinejad said Tehran is willing to exploit its nuclear potential in as diverse fields as power generation, agriculture and medicine. On a possible meeting with President Bush, Ahmedinejad said a state and not personal decision allows the president to sit face-to-face with the US president in presence of world media and if it is broadcast live. On Iraq, the Iranian president said Tehran can offer the best way out of the Iraqi crisis, and that is a human look by Washington at the war-torn country. Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council Ali Larijani says he will meet EU Foreign Policy Chief Javier Solana as planned in Ankara on Wednesday, expressing hope serious talks could work out a viable solution to the nuclear dispute. Larijani told reporters after a meeting with Lebanon's former Interior Minister Suleiman Franjeh on Monday, Tehran wants to have non-diversion by Iran top on the agenda, something, if discussed thoroughly, will obviate the need for any precondition. The Iranian top nuclear negotiator said the new situation needs fresh initiatives to work on. Larijani added if Europe fails to take the talks seriously and performs a diplomatic dance, negotiations will end inconclusively. In Luxembourg, Solana, upon arrival for an EU foreign ministers meeting, said this about his upcoming meeting with Larijani in the Turkish capital.
I am going to meet him on Wednesday. I'm going to meet him in Turkey, and I expect to begin the resumption of the talks that we left a time ago and see if we can move towards negotiation, but I cannot be more precise at this point in time.
Washington acknowledges that Tehran has pulled off a political victory in signing a $30 billion oil deal with Austria. State Department spokesman Sean McCormick said on Monday that the White House is trying to persuade the Austrian side that the time is not ripe for investment in Iran's oil and gas sector and would also open talks with the Austrian government in that regard. The spokesman added the $30 billion worth contract would undermine the UN Security Council resolution against Iran. The European Union foreign ministers on Monday formally agreed to introduce sanctions against Iran over its nuclear activities in line with the UN Security Council resolution. At a meeting in Luxembourg, the EU foreign ministers agreed on a list of people and organizations linked to Iran's nuclear industry based on UN Security Council sanctions passed in December. However, the EU's sanctions go further than UN Resolution 1737. This comes while Iran has had no transactions with the EU member states in the field of missile program and nuclear industry since 1990s.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only.